I knew the end was coming not because of the quarterly numbers or the whispers in the break room, but because Chad, our new interim CEO, Reed, stepson with a bachelor's degree in recreation management and a minor in failing upwards, had replaced the industrial coffee machine with a kombucha tap that smelled like fermented gym socks. For 12 years, I have been the environmental compliance manager for Apex Industrial Solutions. That's a fancy way of saying I am the only person standing between a rusting, leaking, chemical belching factory and a federal indictment that would make Chernobyl look like a minor parking violation. I know every pipe, every permit, and every skeleton buried under the foundation, metaphorically, and given the safety record before I got here, almost literally. The summon to Chad's office came at 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. The email subject line was synergy and realignment. It might as well have said bring a box for your shit. I walked into his office. It used to be his stepfather's office, a room that smelled of old leather, cigar smoke, and fear. Now, it looked like an Apple store had an orgy with a WeWork. Everything was glass and brushed aluminum. Chad was sitting behind a desk that cost more than my car, vaping something that smelled like cotton candy and bad decisions. He wasn't wearing socks, just those little leather loafers exposing his ankles, which I assume is the uniform for I've never done physical labor in my life. Dana, take a seat, he said, gesturing to a chair that looked like a torture device designed by IKEA. We're doing some pivoting today. Pivoting, I repeated, my voice was flat. I don't do bubbly. I do EPA audits and hazardous waste manifests. Exactly. Look, Dana, we value your legacy here, but we're moving toward a more agile, cloud-native approach to compliance. We need fresh eyes, digital natives, I blinked. Chad, the EPA isn't cloud-native. They are federal agents with clipboards and guns who measure parts per million of benzene in the groundwater. I built the compliance system from scratch. It's not an app you download. He smiled that condescending smile. Kind you see on a guy who thinks buying crypto makes him an economist. We've hired a consultancy firm, Green Tech Vision. They're going to automate your workflow. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go, effective immediately. I stared at him. I could hear the hum of the ventilation system, Unit 4 specifically, which I knew had a fraying belt that needed replacing next week or the filtration system would fail. I knew that. He didn't. You're firing me, I said, clarifying the sludge coming out of his mouth. We're right-sizing, he corrected, tapping his vape pen on the desk. Now, if you could just hand over your badge and laptop. Security is outside to help you collect your personal effects. Quick side note before this train wreck gets worse. If you're enjoying watching a nepotism baby destroy a multi-million-dollar company in real time, go ahead and hit subscribe and upvote this mess. It helps the algorithm almost as much as beer helps me tolerate these memories. Chad, I said, standing up. I felt a strange calm washing over me. It was the same calm I felt when I found a leaking drum of solvent in 14 and had to coordinate a hazmat team while the plant manager was hyperventilating in the corner. Just so we are clear, you are terminating my access. You are taking the laptop. You are telling me my services are no longer required. That's the legal gist of it, yeah. Sign here for the severance. 2 weeks pay, 2 weeks. 12 years of keeping this rust bucket legal, 12 years of dodging fines that would bankrupt a small country, and he offers me 2 weeks and a smile. Okay, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my badge. It was worn down, the plastic peeling at the edges. I placed it on his glass desk. It made a distinct click. Then I placed the laptop next to it. The password is on a sticky note under the keyboard. But Chad, the compliance system isn't just files on a drive. We've got it covered, Dana. He waved a hand dismissively, already looking at his phone, probably checking his Tinder or Grindr or whatever platform he uses to disappoint people sexually. Don't be bitter. Bitter? No, I wasn't bitter. I was nuclear. I walked out of that office with security guard heavy breathing behind me, poor Larry, who I've shared Christmas donuts with for a decade, looking at the floor in shame. He knew. Everyone who actually worked for a living knew. I'm sorry, Dana, Larry muttered as we reached the front gate. Don't worry about it, Larry, I said, lighting a cigarette the second my feet hit the public sidewalk. The smoke tasted like freedom and impending doom. Just do me a favor. Keep your head down tomorrow morning. Around 8 a.m. Why, what's happening at 8 a.m.? The future, I exhaled, or the past coming to collect. One of the two. See, Chad made one critical mistake. He assumed compliance was a department. It wasn't, it was me. And he assumed the automated reports I set up were company property. They weren't. They were scripts running on my private credentials, linked to my personal encryption keys, designed to require a heartbeat confirmation every 24 hours. A dead man's switch. If I didn't log in by 7:52 a.m. to confirm I was active and employed, the system didn't just stop. Oh no, it defaulted to transparency mode. I got into my 2016 Ford Escape, the engine rattling slightly. I need to fix that mount, and looked back at the shiny glass facade of the office. Chad was probably up there high-fiving himself, thinking he just saved $85,000 a year in salary. He didn't save money. He just pulled the pin on a grenade and shoved it down his own pants. I put the car in drive. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just turned up the radio, some classic rock station playing Don't Fear the Reaper, and drove to the liquor store. I had a date with a bottle of gin and a laptop that was about to become the most dangerous weapon in the state. You have to understand something about industrial manufacturing in the Rust Belt. It's not like the tech startups Chad jerked off to in Forbes magazine. It's not clean code and bean-bag chairs. It is a constant, violent war against entropy, gravity, and chemistry. The plant, Apex Industrial, manufactures specialized coatings for automotive parts. Sounds boring, right? Wrong. To make that stuff, use chemicals with names that have more syllables than Chad has brain cells. Xylene, toluene, hexavalent chromium. Stuff that doesn't just kill you, it mutates your ghost. For the last decade, my job wasn't just filling out forms. I was the keeper of the beast. The system Chad thought he could just hand over to a consultant wasn't a piece of software you buy off the shelf. It was a Frankenstein's monster I built out of Excel macros, Python scripts, and sheer panic. He had permits from the county, the state, and the feds. Each one had different reporting thresholds. The county wanted to know if we spilled a cup of oil. The feds wanted to know if we breathed too hard near the smokestacks. I had a calendar in my head that was more complex than the Mayan apocalypse. Mondays, check the pH levels in the outflow tanks. If it's above 8.5, the city fines us $10,000. Wednesdays, audit the hazardous waste storage. If a drum has been sitting there for more than 90 days, it's a RCRA violation. $37,500 per day, per violation. Fridays, the big one. The Tidal V Air Emissions Report. This is the one that tells the EPA we aren't poisoning the local elementary school. Chad didn't know about the ghosts in the machine. Didn't know that sensor 3 on the north stack always reads high because a bird built a nest in it in 2018 and we never calibrated it back, so you have to manually deduct 12% from the reading to get the real number. If you report the raw number, you just confess to a felony. If you report 0, you're lying to the government. You have to report the calculated number. I was the only one who knew the math. I remember one time, about 4 years ago, the old CEO, Chad's stepdad, a bastard but a competent one, came to me. Dana, he grunted, chewing on a cigar that looked like a turd. The inspector is here. He looks like he didn't get laid last night. Fix it. I walked that inspector through the plant for 4 hours. I dazzled him with spreadsheets. I showed him logs so detailed they included the barometric pressure. I bought him a sandwich from the vending machine. By the end, I was so bored and overwhelmed by my paperwork that he signed the certificate just to get away from me. That was the job. Boring the government into submission while secretly frantically patching leaks with duct tape and prayer. But Chad saw me as overhead. Dana just sits at her computer, he probably told the board. She's legacy cost. He didn't realize that I hadn't had an assistant in 5 years because of budget cuts. I was doing the work of 3 people. I was the environmental manager, the safety officer, and the de facto IT support for the warehouse guys because they didn't trust the actual IT department. When I got home after the firing, I sat in my kitchen. My kitchen is like me, functional, clean, and slightly outdated. I poured a glass of iced tea. I was saving the gin for the main event and looked at the clock. 2:00 p.m. At the plant, the afternoon shift was starting. Right about now. The thermal oxidizer usually spikes in temperature. The alarm would go off in my office. I would remotely adjust the fan speed to cool it down. I stared at my phone, no alerts because I didn't have the app anymore. I imagined the alarm blaring in my empty office. I imagined Chad walking by, hearing it and thinking someone should get that. But there was no someone. The green tech consultants weren't due to arrive until Monday. Chad had created a gap. A 4-day gap where the asylum had no warden. And then there was the cloud log. This was my masterpiece. The EPA requires continuous monitoring. Since our hardware was from the Reagan administration, it couldn't talk to the internet directly. So I wrote a script. The sensors talked to a local server. The server talked to my script. And my script uploaded the data to a secure AWS bucket I managed. The EPA pulled the data from that bucket every morning at 8:00 a.m. sharp. But here's the kicker, the AWS account? It was under my name on my credit card. Expense reported every month. Why? Because corporate IT was too slow to approve a server request in 2017, and I needed it done that day or we would be fined. So I did it myself, shadow IT, they call it. Getting shit done, I call it. Chad fired me. He confiscated my company laptop. But he didn't ask for the password to the AWS cloud account. He didn't even know it existed. So sitting in my kitchen, I opened my personal MacBook. I logged into Amazon Web Services. There it was, the dashboard, green lights flickering, the heartbeat of the factory. I could have just shut it down. I could have deleted the account. That would have been petty, but I'm not petty. I'm compliant. I looked at the scheduled tasks. Next execution, tomorrow, 07:52 a.m. Action, transmit daily compliance report to EPA Region 5 database. I clicked on the script to edit it. Usually, I manually review the data at 7:30 a.m., filter out the sensor glitches like the bird nest error, and approve the send. I disabled the manual review required checkbox. Then I disabled the error correction algorithm. Basically, I told the system, whatever the raw, glitchy, messy, non-compliant sensors see, tell the federal government, tell them everything. I took a sip of tea. It tasted cold and bitter, just how I like it. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when you know a disaster is coming. It's not peaceful, it's heavy. It presses against your eardrums. I spent the evening doing normal things which felt surreal. I fed Mr. Business, my cat, named after the Bob's Burgers character because he has anxiety issues. I watered my ferns. I ate a microwave lasagna that tasted like cardboard and tomato paste. All the while, my laptop sat open on the dining room table, the screen glowing like a radioactive isotope. I checked the raw data stream coming from the plant. Without my daily calibration adjustments, the numbers were looking interesting. The thermal oxidizer was running at 1450 degrees. The permit limit is 1400. Not a catastrophe yet, but a violation. The pH in the water outflow was 9.2. That's basic enough to strip paint. Violation, and the best one? The VOC, volatile organic compounds, monitor in the mixing room. It was reading error 404 sensor fault. When the system sees a sensor fault, my protocol, the one I wrote, says to hold the report and alert the manager, me, to go fix the wire. But without the error correction active, system defaults to EPA protocol. Do you know what the EPA protocol is for dead sensor? You have to assume worst-case scenario discharge until proven otherwise. Essentially, tomorrow morning, the computer was going to tell the government, we don't know what we are emitting, so assume we are emitting pure poison. I poured myself a glass of gin. Cheap stuff, beefeater. It burned going down. I thought about calling Chad. I really did. I imagined his phone buzzing on his nightstand next to whatever overpriced moisturizer he uses. Chad, I would say, you're about to step on a landmine. And he would say, you're just jealous of our synergy, Dana. No, he had to learn. Lesson number 1 in heavy industry. Safety regulations are written in blood. Compliance regulations are written in money. He was about to bleed money. I slept surprisingly well. I woke up at 6:30 a.m., habitual alarm. For a second I panicked, thinking I had to rush to get dressed and beat the traffic. Then I remembered. I rolled over, stretched, and listened to the birds chirping. It was a Wednesday. Usually I'd be in the morning stand-up meeting listening to the production manager scream about quotas. Instead, I made coffee. Good coffee, French press. 07:45 a.m. I sat in front of my MacBook. The terminal window was open. The script was counting down. Status, pre-flight check initiated. Connection, active. Target, US EPA R5 submission portal. I could stop it. I could hit cancel. I could delete the API key and the report would just fail to send. The EPA would flag a missed report, which is a $5,000 fine. Manageable. A slap on the wrist, but Chad didn't treat me like a missed report. He treated me like waste. 07:50 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Brenda in accounting. Place is a zoo. Chad is walking around with the consultants. They look like high schoolers. Someone asked where the compliance dashboard is. Chad pointed to the fire alarm panel. I miss you, I smiled. The fire alarm panel, classic. 07:52 a.m. on my screen executing upload. Packet 1 of 4 cent, packet 2 of 4 cent, packet 3 of 4 cent, packet 4 of 4 cent. Server response, 200 OK. Receipt confirmed. It was done. The report was in the federal database. A legally binding document stating that Apex Industrial was currently operating in violation of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and common sense. And because I was no longer an employee, and my name was stripped from the authorized representative field by Chad's HR team yesterday, the report was submitted under the default generic account, Apex Industrial System auto-generated. I closed the laptop. Mr. Business, I said to the cat, who was licking his butt on the rug, I think we should order breakfast. Waffles? The clock ticked to 8 o'clock a.m. The EPA offices in Chicago open at 8 o'clock a.m. Their automated flagging system takes about 12 minutes to process incoming data and flag critical exceedances. Meant by 8:15 a.m., a red light was going to start blinking on a dashboard in a federal building 300 miles away. By 8:30 a.m., a human being named Steve, I know Steve, he has no soul and loves fines, would look at it. By 9 o'clock a.m., the field agents would be dispatched. I sipped my coffee. The silence in my house was beautiful. The noise was about to start, but for the first time in 12 years, it wasn't my noise. I wasn't there. But I know exactly what happened. I know because in a factory, gossip travels faster than electricity, and I had spies. Brenda accounting and Larry security were my eyes and ears. The text messages started rolling in at 8:45 a.m. Larry, federal plates. 2 black SUVs just pulled up to the main gate. They didn't stop for the badge check. They just flashed badges and drove through. I chuckled. The EPA emergency response team. They don't wait for the gate arm to lift. They are the gate arm. Brenda, Chad just ran out of his office. He looks pale. Who are these guys in the blue windbreakers? Blue windbreakers. That meant it wasn't just a routine audit. That was the Grim Reaper squad. Here's how I imagine the scene based on the frantic texts and my knowledge of federal procedure. Chad probably met them in the lobby, wearing his CEO smile, trying to deploy his handshake. Gentlemen, welcome to Apex. We weren't expecting visitors, but we're always happy to save it, the lead agent, probably Agent Miller. He hates small talk, would say. We received a self-reported critical exceedance alert at 7:52 a.m. indicating uncontrolled release of VOX and pH violation. Where is Dana Kowalski? That was the moment. The record scratch. Chad, Dana is no longer with the organization. We've restructured. Agent Miller restructured. Fired the compliance officer and didn't appoint a replacement before the reporting cycle? Chad, we have consultants. Green Tech Vision. Agent Miller, I don't care if you have the Avengers. Your system just reported that you are dumping caustic sludge into the municipal water table. We are issuing an immediate cease and desist order. Shut it down. Brenda, OMG, they are shutting us down. The alarm is going off. Chad is screaming at the consultants. The consultants are crying. The shutdown order, it's the nuclear option. It doesn't mean stop working for an hour. It means cut the power to the manufacturing lines, vent the pipes, send the workers to the break room. Every minute the line is down costs the company roughly $4,500 in lost revenue. Larry, they just put yellow tape around the mixing room. They're taking samples. Chad is trying to call his dad, the founder. Dad is in Florida playing golf. This is amazing. I pictured Chad, sweating through that cheap dress shirt. He had probably thought compliance was just a box to check, a nuisance. He didn't realize it was the structural integrity of the entire business. I decided to do a little laundry, folded some towels. The mundane nature of my morning was the perfect counterweight to the chaos I had unleashed by simply not doing my job. Around 10:30 a.m., my phone rang. A known number, I let it go to voicemail. I checked the transcription a minute later. Miss Kowalski, this is Agent Miller, EPA Region 5. We're currently on site at Apex. We have some questions regarding the data logs from this morning. The current management seems unable to access the historic calibration records. Call me back. I didn't call him back. I'm a private citizen. I have no obligation to the EPA. Then the second call. Caller ID, Apex HQ. It was Chad. I stared at the phone vibrating on the counter. It buzzed angrily like an insect trapped in a jar. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again immediately, and again, he was panic dialing. The CrossFit clown was realizing that his agile management style couldn't bench press a federal indictment. I picked up the phone on the fourth attempt. I didn't say hello, I just listened. Dana, thank God, pick up. His voice was an octave higher than usual. He sounded like a teenager who just crashed his dad's Porsche. This is Dana, I said, my voice calm, smooth, professional. Dana, look, there's been a misunderstanding. The EPA is here. They're tearing the place apart. They're saying the system reported a leak, but there's no leak, it's a glitch. You know how to fix the glitches, right? I do, I said. It's a calibration error in the sensor array. Requires a manual offset adjustment based on the humidity and barometric pressure. Yes, exactly. Can you just log in and tell them that? Just remote in and fix it? I took a long, slow drag of my cigarette. I don't smoke inside usually, but today was a special occasion. Chad, I said, I can't do that. Why not? I'll pay you. I'll pay you for the day. Consultant rate. I can't do that because I don't work for Apex anymore. And accessing corporate systems after termination would be a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I'd be hacking. You wouldn't want me to commit a felony, would you? Dana, please, they shut down the line. We're losing $5,000 a minute. That sounds like a management problem, I said. You should ask your green tech visionaries. Maybe they can disrupt the EPA. Dana stopped damn around. He screamed. The facade cracked. The rage spilled out. You did this. You set this up. I didn't do anything, Chad. That's the point. I did nothing. You fired the pilot mid-flight and are surprised the plane is crashing. I hung up. Then I blocked his number. But I wasn't done. I knew how corporate panic worked. He would go to HR, then he would go to legal, then they would come to me. I went to my laptop and opened a Word document. Typed a header, proposal for crisis remediation and consulting services. I looked at the cursor blinking. I typed, retainer fee. I paused. Originally, I was going to ask for year's salary, maybe $150K, but then I remembered his tone. Don't be bitter. I remembered the 2-week severance. I remembered the badge hitting the glass desk. I deleted the number. I typed $2 million and 0 cents inflation. I whispered to the cat, it's a bitch. Noon, the situation at Apex had graduated from dumpster fire to landfill inferno. According to my network, the EPA hadn't just shut down the mixing line. They had issued a site-wide stop work order. Why? Because when they asked Chad for the material safety data sheets, MSDS, for the tank farm, he handed them a binder from 2019 that I had marked obsolete/do not use in bright red Sharpie. Chad had handed the feds the wrong playbook. So the feds assumed the worst. They cordoned off the warehouse. Larry, it's a parking lot out here. We got 18-wheelers lined up down the street. Drivers are pissed. They're honking. It sounds like a geese orgy. I knew those drivers. They get paid by the mile. If they're sitting there losing money, and if they're losing money, they're calling their dispatchers. And their dispatchers are calling Apex's customers. Hey, Ford Motor Company, yeah, your coding shipment is stuck behind a federal blockade. The ripple effect was beautiful. It was the butterfly effect if the butterfly was a 45-year-old woman in sweatpants drinking gin. Around 1 o'clock p.m., I got an email, not from Chad, from Linda. Linda was the HR director. Linda was the kind of woman who had live, laugh, love stenciled on her office wall, but would deny your bereavement leave if your mother died on a Tuesday. She was Chad's enabler-in-chief. Subject, urgent, exit interview and intellectual property. Dana, it has come to our attention that you may be withholding critical company passwords and proprietary data configurations. As per your employment contract, all intellectual property belongs to Apex. We require you to immediately provide the administrative credentials for the EPA reporting gateway. Failure to comply will result in legal action. You're praying you make the right choice. Linda praying, classic Linda. I didn't reply immediately. I let it sit. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to hear the silence of the factory floor, which is the most expensive sound in the world. I took a shower. I used the expensive scrub. I took my time shaving my legs. I put on a face mask. Self-care is important when you are besieging a fortress. At 2:30 p.m., I opened my laptop again. I replied to Linda. Linda, I am not withholding anything. I returned all company property, laptop, badge yesterday. The passwords you are referring to are for a cloud architecture system that resides on my personal AWS account, paid for by my personal credit card, which I created because your department denied my budget request for a server in 2017. See attached email chain. This is not company property. It is a third-party service provider. That provider is me. I am open to discussing a transfer of ownership. However, I am currently fully booked with other projects. Laundry. Best, Dana. I attached the email from 2017 where the old IT director, Linda's nephew, surprise, surprise, told me, we don't need cloud servers, Excel is fine, receipts. I had receipts for days. I had receipts that were older than Chad's career. 3 o'clock p.m. The Slack channels, which I could no longer see, but Brenda was screenshotting for me, were melting down. Sales VP, Ford just called. They're threatening to pull the contract. Tell me we are running. Ops manager, we are dead in the water. The EPA guy is putting a padlock on the breaker box. Chad, everyone remain calm. We are leveraging a solution. Leveraging a solution. God, he was a parody. Then the realization hit them. I know the exact moment it happened because Brenda sent me a picture of the conference room. It was Chad, Linda, and the corporate counsel, a guy named Gary who looked like a depressed basset hound. They were staring at a whiteboard. On the whiteboard, someone had written, only Dana knows. It wasn't just the password. It was the logic. Even if I gave them the password, they wouldn't know which numbers were real and which were glitches. They wouldn't know the bird nest coefficient. They wouldn't know that tank 4 reads 10% lower than tank 5 because of the sediment buildup. If they turned the system back on without me, it would just scream violation again. They needed the operator, not just the keys. The sun started to dip lower. The shadows stretched across my living room. The factory had been down for 6 hours. Estimated loss, $1.6 million in production, plus potential EPA fines of $50,000 per day, plus the breach of contract with Ford. They were bleeding out, and I was the only tourniquet in our state. My phone rang again. Caller ID Apex Legal Department. Gary, I picked up. Hello, Gary. Dana. Gary sounded tired. He sounded like a man who knew he was defending a circus. Look, we've reviewed the AWS situation. You're right, it's gray area. The company technically didn't pay for the hosting. It's not gray, Gary. It's black and white. It's my server. Okay, fine. What do you want? Chad is not in a good headspace. We need to resolve this. Today, I have a proposal prepared, I said. I'm sending it to your inbox now. I hit send on the PDF. Remediation strategy proposal, Kowalski PDF, Gary, I said while he presumably opened the file. Make sure you're sitting down. I heard the click of a mouse. Then silence, a long, heavy silence, then a cough. Dana, this is $2 million. It is. Agreed cheerfully. Extra pickles. No remorse, this is extortion. No, Gary, extortion is demanding money for nothing. This is a consulting fee for specialized, niche expertise required to save a $50 million company from federal seizure. I'm actually giving you a discount. If the EPA revokes the Title V permit, you lose the license to operate permanently. What's the company worth then? Scrap metal value? He breathed heavily. I can't authorize this. Then call Chad's dad in Florida. Interrupt his golf game. Tell him his stepson drove the bus off a cliff and I'm the only one with a tow truck. I'll call you back. He hung up. I walked to the window. I could see the smoke rising from the direction of the industrial park. Except today there was no smoke. The stacks were cold. The sky was clear. It was the prettiest sunset I'd ever seen. I made myself a sandwich, ham and cheese on rye. I ate it slowly, standing over the sink, watching the birds in the backyard. I was in no rush. Every minute that ticked by was another $1,000 of leverage. 5:15 p.m. The phone rang. It wasn't Gary. It wasn't Chad. It was a Florida area code. The founder, big boss, Todd. Todd was a hard ass. He was the kind of guy who smoked inside the plant in the 80s and poured used oil on the weeds. But he respected strength. He hated weakness. And right now, his company was looking very weak. I wiped the crumbs off my face and answered. Hello, Todd. Dana, his voice sounded like gravel in a blender. What the hell is going on? I'm on the 14th hole and I get a call saying the feds have taped off my loading dock. Chad fired me yesterday, Todd. He fired me, confiscated my equipment, and didn't ask for the transition protocols for the compliance system. The system auto-reported a fault this morning. The boy is an idiot. Todd grunted. I knew I shouldn't have let his mother talk me into giving him the reins. He thinks he's Elon Musk because he knows how to use Twitter. He's certainly disrupting the industry, I said dryly. He says you're holding the data hostage. Says you want $2 million bucks. I'm not holding anything hostage. The data is on a private server I maintain because your IT department wouldn't. I offered to sell the server and my expertise to fix the mess Chad made. That's the price. $2 million is steep, Dana. That's a lot of zeros. The EPA fine for Title V violations starts at $37,500 per day per violation. The breach of contract with Ford is probably $500K. The lost production is $1.6 million a day. By tomorrow morning, you've lost more than my fee. By Friday, you're bankrupt. Silence. I could hear the wind blowing into his phone. He was probably standing on the fairway, staring at a sand trap. If I pay it, Todd said, his voice dropping low, can you fix it? Can you get the feds off my back? I can. I have the historical data to prove the sensor fault. I can generate a corrected report, file an amendment with the EPA, and walk Agent Miller through the logs. I can have the stop work order lifted by Thursday afternoon. And Chad, that's your problem, Todd. But if I come back, he doesn't speak to me. He doesn't look at me. If he vapes in my direction, the price doubles. Todd let out a short, bark-like laugh. Fair enough, you're a shark, Dana. I should have made you CEO instead of that little shit. You should have, I agreed, but here we are. I'll have legal draw up the agreement. Wiring instructions, escrow, I said. I don't touch a keyboard until the money is confirmed in a third-party escrow account. Smart, fine. Expect the DocuSign in an hour. He hung up. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from adrenaline. I had just negotiated a retirement package that was larger than my cumulative lifetime earnings. But it wasn't over. The money was paper. The satisfaction, that was going to be in the execution. 6:30 p.m., the DocuSign arrived. Consulting agreement and IP transfer. Clause 1, payment of $2 million and 0 cents upon execution. Clause 2, consultant Dana agrees to remediate EPA violations. Clause 3, non-disparagement mutual. I signed it. I watched the little green bar complete. 7:00 p.m., my bank called the private client line, which I assume they routed me to once they saw the pending escrow notification. Miss Kowalski, we have a large incoming wire pending verification. It's legitimate, I said. Clear it. 7:45 p.m. I got into my car. I put on my work boots, the steel-toed ones with the chemical stains. I put on my old Carhartt jacket. I wasn't going in as an employee. I was going in as the cleaner. I drove to the plant. The parking lot was empty except for the security guard, Chad's Tesla, and the 2 black SUVs still parked by the door. Larry was at the gate. He looked tired. When he saw my car, his face lit up. He opened the gate before I even swiped. Miss Kowalski, you're back. Just visiting, Larry, I said, rolling down the window, just visiting. I pulled up to the front door. Chad was waiting in the lobby. He looked like he had aged 10 years and 10 hours. His shirt was untucked. His hair was messy. He looked at me with a mix of hatred and desperation. You really did it, he hissed as I walked in. You really fleeced us. I stopped. I looked him up and down. Chad, I said, my voice echoing in the empty lobby. I didn't fleece you. I charged you a stupidity tax. And you're in a high bracket. Just fix it, he muttered, turning away. Lead the way, I said, and get me a coffee, black, no kombucha. The conference room smelled like stale pizza and panic sweat. Agent Miller and his partner, a woman named Agent Rossi, were sitting at the table with laptops open. Legal Gary was there, looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole. When I walked in, Miller looked up. Miss Kowalski, he said. He didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed. About time. These clowns, he gestured vaguely at Chad, tried to tell me a fluctuating voltage in the thermal oxidizer was a feature. Good evening, Agent Miller, I said, setting my MacBook down on the table. I didn't look at Chad. I plugged into the projector. So I began projecting my screen. Here is what happened. At 7:52 a.m., system auto-reported raw data because the calibration algorithm was disabled. Why was it disabled? Because it requires a manual user authentication from a qualified compliance officer. Since I was terminated, no authentication occurred. I pulled up the graph, a jagged red line spiking up and down. This, I pointed to the spike, looks like a massive release of Vox, but look at the correlation with the humidity sensor. I overlaid a blue line. It matched perfectly. The sensor isn't shielding properly. When humidity hits 80%, which it did this morning, the sensor shorts. It reads high. It's a false positive. We've had a work order in to replace the shielding for 6 months. I shot a glance at Chad. Denied due to budget constraints. Miller nodded. I see the correlation. Do you have the manual stack tests to back up the false positive theory? I do, I said. I have daily manual stack tests for the last 3 years stored in the cloud archive. I clicked a folder. Thousands of files appeared, organized by date, time, and technician signature. The room went silent. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming. It was a wall of diligence. Agent Rossi squinted. This is incredibly thorough. I take my job seriously, I said, unlike some people. I spent the next 2 hours walking them through the data. I reconstructed the morning's events minute by minute. I proved, mathematically, that no poison was released. I proved that the pH spike was a sensor drift caused by lack of cleaning, again, maintenance budget cut. By 10 o'clock p.m., Miller closed his laptop. All right, he said, I'm satisfied. The data supports a sensor failure, not a release event. We're lifting the cease and desist, pending a physical sensor replacement within 24 hours. He looked at Chad. Your lucky son, if she hadn't kept these logs, I would have condemned this building. Chad didn't say anything. He was staring at the table. He looked small. The CEO costume had fallen off, leaving just a scared kid who realized the world wasn't an app. Thank you, Agent Miller, I said. As the agents packed up to leave, I turned to the green tech consultants who had been hiding in the corner. Boys, I said, you want the credentials for the system so you can take over. He nodded eagerly. Great. I wrote a username and password on a sticky note. User, admin pass, you need Dana 1. I slapped the note on the glass table. The code is in Python. It's about 40,000 lines, no comments. Good luck. Their faces dropped. They knew I knew. Without the architect, the blueprint is just a drawing. I unplugged my laptop. The room was quiet. Chad, I said. He looked up. My contract stipulates that I provide a remediation plan. I just did. The EPA is leaving. You can turn the power back on. Dana, he started, his voice cracking. Maybe we acted too hastily if you want to stay on. As a consultant, I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. Stay? Chad, I just made $2 million in 4 hours. I'm not staying. I'm going to Disney World, or maybe I'll just go home and sleep for a week. But I am definitely not fixing that sensor for you. You have 24 hours. Better get a screwdriver. I walked out. I didn't look back at the glass office. I didn't look back at the fermentation jar. I walked out to the parking lot where the air smelled like ozone and wet pavement. You'd think walking away with the money would be enough. And for a normal person, maybe it would be. But I've spent too many years breathing fumes. I have a toxic streak. The next morning, Thursday, I didn't have to wake up, but I did. I sat on my porch with coffee and checked my bank account. The zeros were there. Beautiful, round, comforting zeros. But then I checked LinkedIn. Chad had posted, proud to announce a successful navigation of regulatory challenges at Apex. Agile leadership means adapting to the storm. #leadership #grindset. He was spinning it. He was taking credit for my rescue. Oh, hell no, I whispered. See. Part of the access I gave the consultants included the email archives. But what I didn't tell them, and what they were too stupid to check, was that I had a BCC rule set up on the compliance server. Every automated alert, every failure notice, every frantic email from me to management warning them about this exact scenario. It was all archived. And since I was now an independent consultant who had completed her contract, I was no longer bound by employee confidentiality regarding public safety risks. I opened a Tor browser. Yes, I know how to use Tor. I'm in compliance. I know how to hide things and how to find things. I navigated to the tip line for Industry Watchdog, the trade publication that everyone in our sector reads, the one Ford's procurement officers read. Subject, whistleblower dump. Apex Industrial ignored 4 years of safety warnings. I uploaded the PDF, not the data, the emails, the ones where Chad denied the budget for the sensor, the ones where Todd, the dad, told me to make the numbers work, the ones where Linda in HR told me to stop being negative when I reported a gas leak. I hit send. Then I texted Brenda. Hey, how's the mood? Brenda, weird. Chad is strutting around like he won the Super Bowl. He thinks he's invincible. Do me a favor, I texted back. Tell Larry to check the job board at Midwest Coatings across town. Their compliance manager just retired. I put in a good word for him and for you. Brenda, really? OMG, I hate it here. Go now. Before noon. Why before noon? Because Industry Watchdog updates their news feed at 11:30 a.m. At 11:35 a.m., my phone blew up with notifications from former coworkers. Larry, did you see the article? Holy shit. I clicked the link. Headline, leaked emails reveal Apex Industrial ignored critical safety warnings before EPA shutdown. Subtitle, interim CEO rejected safety repairs to fund office modernization. There was a picture of the emails. Redactions were minimal. You could clearly see Chad's signature block with a stupid sent from my iPhone tagline. The article detailed everything. The nepotism, the negligence, the fact that they had to pay a former employee a multimillion-dollar ransom to save the plant. Ford Motor Company doesn't like bad press. They like green supply chains. Within an hour, I heard via Brenda, who was packing her box, that Ford had suspended their contract pending a quality audit. Chad wasn't just fired. He was radioactive. No one in the industry would hire him to run a lemonade stand. I sat back in my chair. The sun was warm. I had the money. I had the truth out there. And I had salted the earth so thoroughly that nothing would grow in Chad's garden for a decade. This wasn't just petty. This was compliance. I was complying with the laws of karma. 3 months later, I'm standing in the aisle of a Home Depot, not the one near the plant, one in Florida. I bought a condo, it's near the beach. It has a screened-in porch for Mr. Business. I'm looking at air filters. Force of habit, even now. I see a MERV 13 filter and I think about particulate matter counts. My phone buzzes, it's a LinkedIn notification. Chad open to work, viewed your profile. I smirk. I heard Todd fired him the day the article came out. Last I heard, Chad was trying to launch a podcast about resilience in business. It has 12 listeners. I also heard Apex was bought out by a competitor for pennies on the dollar. They gutted the management team. Brenda is the CFO of the new place. Larry is head of security. They asked me to come back, offered me a VP title. I sent them a picture of my toes buried in the sand. I grab a cart, I'm not buying filters, I'm buying paint. Seafoam green, I'm repainting the guest room. You know, people talk about quiet quitting. I didn't quiet quit, I loud quit, I nuclear quit. And sometimes, late at night, when the ocean breeze hits the porch, I wonder if I feel bad. I ruined a family legacy. I embarrassed a young man, an idiot but young. I took a chunk of cash that could have saved 50 jobs. I take a sip of my drink. It's not gin anymore, it's iced tea. I think about the cancer rates in the county where the plant is. I think about the benzene. I think about the time Chad told me my job was overhead. Do I feel bad? I check my bank app. The interest payment alone this month was more than my old annual salary. Nope. I say to the empty room. I open my laptop one last time. I still have the AWS bookmark. I click it. Delete instance? Warning, this action cannot be undone. All historical data will be lost. The plant is under new management. They have their own systems now. They don't need my ghosts. I hover over the button. For a second, I hesitate. That data was my life for 12 years. It was my baby. But my baby grew up and tried to kill me. So I have to put it down. I click YES. The screen goes black. Instance terminated. I close the laptop. I stand up. I walk out to the porch where the sun is setting over the Gulf of Mexico. It's messy. It's humid. It smells like salt and rotting seaweed. It smells like victory. I'm Dana. I fix things. And finally, I fixed my own life. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.